Welcome to the Real Recovery Show here in Las Vegas. I am Lisa Trevino, and before I get into what we're going to be talking about on this great show that we just started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am 51 years old, and I am 23 years in long-term recovery from alcohol and drugs and several other things. And I grew up in dysfunction. I grew up in an environment with a lot of addiction, and there was a lot of addiction in my family tree as well. And there's a certain type of thinking that goes on in that internal environment, one where you learn how to not feel your feelings, how to be fake, how to develop a false self, and how to navigate in the world with a very defensive, victim-like perspective. And so one of the reasons why we want to do a show on recovery is that we want to be able to talk about all the things that people who grew up in dysfunction can't talk about, and anybody in our society with our societal rules of you fake it till you make it and never let them see you sweat. We have a lot of ideas in our society that promote alcohol, drugs, partying, self-medicating. These ideas in our society also promote eating more than we need to for the purpose of pleasure and not for health and sustainment. We have a medical system that is all about fixing the effects at certain points, but not dealing with the causes. And we have stigma around anybody expressing in any way, shape, or form that they have a problem. And it's really important that we are able to start breaking these rules of don't talk and speaking at a level that allows us to have conversations with people, interviews with people, people who have overcome great things in their life, but also people who have written books with lots of tools, or medical professionals or psychologists or clinical therapists, people who know different modalities that can help a person, as well as down, deep, honest gut level conversations about everything that you wouldn't normally hear on a show like this. Like, we will talk about body images and sex. We will talk about relationships and dysfunction. We will talk about recovering from physical illnesses that maybe your doctor says you couldn't recover from. We'll talk about what to do when you don't know if you have a problem and how to tell if you even have one. We'll talk about what addiction even really looks like and how to get help. We'll put you in contact with people that can help you or somebody that you love get help. And we'll have real conversations about, even within 12-step recovery or any other type of modality, about how to navigate and what to expect to get your optimal experience and to experience real recovery. And so joining me here today is Tay Singer, and I'm going to give this over to her so she can share about herself. Tay.
Hi, I'm Tay Singer. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm 39 years old. I grew up here in a home where there was trauma and different experiences, and tried to find who I was and didn't ever really feel like I fit, and found myself in therapy in my early 20s and found myself seeking something that could help me feel differently than I did, that wasn't the drugs and alcohol that I was trying to give up. And yeah, it's been a journey. I have worked in the field for a long time of drugs and alcohol treatment, and I've recently finished my degree, and I'm working on some licensing. And so it's really interesting to be able to get this opportunity to be here on the show with you. And I'm just really excited about the people we're going to reach and the ways that we're going to help people heal.
All right. Well, thank you. I, too, experienced a lot of PTSD and actually was diagnosed with PTSD and on disability for several years. I have also overcome physical illnesses personally. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start off by talking about the word recovery, because in 12-step recovery, the word recovery is usually synonymous with somebody who is in 12-step and works the program. And yet out in the world, the word recovery is used quite prevalently, and people are saying that they are in long-term recovery without necessarily identifying themselves as in a particular 12-step program, and being quite successful in advocating for sobriety or for drug addiction recovery.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, looking at recovery as more than just drug and alcohol recovery is so important. And for many of us, the reason we use drugs and alcohol, there was another issue, and that's what we need to find recovery in, and that's where we need to start. And I'm someone that came in through therapy at 24 years old, after a big trauma had happened, and without that foundation, I wouldn't have 15 years.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the definition of when recovery starts for a person, oftentimes when somebody is in 12-step recovery, they think it starts the moment they enter the door for a 12-step program.
Right.
And that's not actually when it starts. You know, when there's the moment when the person gets to a place where they recognize that something's unacceptable to them, something about their life is intolerable to them.
Right.
And they have to make a change. And that's when recovery starts, because that's when the mind is no longer all in to the problem and the self-medicating and the solution of the alcohol, the drugs, the hoarding, the whatever, the workaholism, the sex addiction, whatever, the behaviors, right? They're no longer invested in that. And there's a part of the mind that says there has to be another way.
Right. And it's about the person themselves. It's not about their family saying, you need to do this. Right. Even though a lot of times people can find recovery that way, it has to be something from within that is saying, I need something different. I can't live this way anymore. This can't be all that there is.
It has to come from within. It could seem like you have a court order that tells you have to go to meetings or seek anger management therapy or something. Right. It could be that your spouse is threatening to take the kids and leave, or your boss has had it and wants you to do something or else. It could seem like the impetus to get help is outside of you, but it really is not outside of you. It's what happens when the mind believes that alcohol or drugs or any of the other substances or behaviors that a person can use to self-medicate is their solution, and finally gets to a place where they recognize that it is not the solution, it is their problem. Mm-hmm. They have to do something different. It's that tipping point. And so I truly believe, and I'm not alone in this, there's foundations, there's groups, there's advocacy, there's so much out there that's happening in this world on behalf of helping people to stop wherever they're at and to start making positive changes. If a person goes to a doctor and the doctor diagnoses them with diabetes, and the doctor suggests that they should change their diet, and they don't change their diet and they get sicker, it's indicative of deeper issues. It's no longer diabetes that's the bigger issue. It's whether or not this person is at a place where they're willing to be their own advocate for their own health.
Right.
And so
exactly,
addiction and recovery, these are words that even there's a group called the Faces and Voices of Recovery, and they have, I think, something like 100,000 people on their website and forums and stuff, and they're working very hard as well on changing the narrative and relieving the stigma from it, and also using different terms and and supporting people in using different terminology, like even calling oneself an alcoholic if it's not helpful, and how do you know you even have a problem? But we're not going to get all the way into that. We will on another episode.
For sure.
But we do really respect all the different tools that people can use to heal. And we do recognize that this being the Real Recovery Show, that we will be mentioning 12-step recovery as part of it. So how are we going to respect and protect people's anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, and films? If they are coming and speaking from their affiliation with a 12-step program. Alcoholics Anonymous was the first program for 12-step recovery. And about 18 years after they were founded by Bill and Dr. Bob, they published the 12 and 12. And in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, it really explains the traditions which are set up. It's 12 principles that help to maintain the integrity and to protect the 12-step program. And this model has been so successful that there is a 12-step program for everything.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah.
And they all, with permission from Alcoholics Anonymous, have used those traditions and those steps as their core foundational model in their program. And so the one tradition that we focus on today in the 12-step program is the one that says, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain anonymity, personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. And so how does one talk about recovery and mention 12-step recovery and protect people's anonymity as well as their own?
And still do the attraction rather than promotion.
Exactly.
Like, how do you recover out loud and stay anonymous?
Exactly. And so here at the Real Recovery Show, this is how we're going to do this. We personally are not affiliated with any 12-step program. We will never mention any kind of affiliation with a 12-step program. We know that there are principles and ideas that we have learned in a myriad of ways, and we know people who are in 12-step recovery who are willing to come on the show, and we can totally protect their anonymity. And how we're going to do this is that anybody that comes on and wants to say that they're in AA, for example, will not be showing their face, and they will not even have their name unless maybe their first name or a pseudonym or something, so that we can truly respect the 12-step program that's helped them, as well as keep them protected and their own anonymity. And if somebody comes on the show at the level of video, then they will not be able to say any affiliation with any 12-step program, so that we could protect and honor the deep traditions of 12-step recovery programs.
Right. And it's not saying that people that aren't in those programs, they're just not going to mention them at this level, so that we can protect the spirit behind it. And
absolutely. And also, this is not something new. It is not about not having a radio show or a TV show. That was never the issue. It was about not dragging AA's name or NA's name or acting like anything that you express at the level of this represents a 12-step program.
Right.
And one of the reasons why is because anonymity is an incredible spiritual ideal, is that you don't want to represent AA or NA or OA or anything, because some days you might be the epitome of mental health and you want all the people to listen to all the wisdom that spews out of you. And then there are days when you have something pretty gnarly coming up to heal and it comes out sideways, and you hope that nobody
associates you with
a 12-step program. And that's one of the things, is that just to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous or NA or anything helps a person to just focus on the message. But it is not the only way. There are a lot of tools and a lot of resources, and we're going to be talking about all of them.
Right.
Not just for when it comes to recovering from an addiction specifically, like we mentioned, healing from physical illness too, but there are certain mental issues that people need, like PTSD or obsessive compulsive disorder
Right.
or bipolar or anything
Right.
that can co-occur, meaning they can have a mental diagnosis as well as have an active or they're recovering from an addiction.
Right.
And there's a lot of stigma around that because sometimes they need to be either temporarily or long-term medication.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about that too.
And this is my most passionate subject, is the stigma behind mental health. And
Absolutely.
I so look forward to that episode.
Yes. Well, there'll probably be more than one. But so this topic is more general, more inclusive, and it incorporates all the different conversations. We're going to be having an episode where we talk about how to get a bed in a detox unit, where we talk about sober living and interview people who run sober living houses. We'll talk about the different things that people have done to navigate in the workforce and in social situations when they are now being abstinent from alcohol or drugs, and the people that they were hanging out with or maybe what they did for a living encouraged them to drink.
Right.
We're going to talk about how to change the narrative of what it means to be somebody who's focused now on being healthy rather than somebody who's trying to avoid a negative
consequence. Yeah, that's such a big deal, is like the idea that this isn't about not getting in trouble anymore. It's about healing and being a whole person.
Yeah. When your butt's on fire,
yeah,
and you need to do something fast,
right?
It's kind of like, somebody told me this, it's kind of like you're in a car accident and you break your leg, right? Well, the first thing you need to do is deal with your broken leg. Then you could figure out how you got into the car accident, what you could do differently, and deal with all the repercussions or fix your car. But the first thing you need to do, you can't care about all that other stuff until you fix your leg. And so what we are looking to do is we're looking to talk about all the real topics and how to get help, how to see if you need help, but also to just talk about a totally different narrative of solution-oriented, not one in which you're trying to put a fire out.
Right.
But one in which you're wanting a better life.
Yeah. Yeah, and the life that, and the people that are going to be here have walked through this and have that better life and want to share it. And it's just really exciting.
It is really interesting how small our lives are. We think that the alcohol or the drugs or the partying or the food or the workaholism or the whatever, that these things are giving us more life. But they're not giving us life.
No, they're taking it away.
They're taking it away. And the things that we can't do as our world gets smaller and smaller, if you can't go and do something because you have to drink, or you can't do something because you have to make sure that whatever it is that you need is going to be there, or you're avoiding and you're isolating and you're feeling shame, or as we are sick as our secrets, you feel that you just need to talk about this stuff and you're so uncomfortable in your own skin that you feel terminally unique and alone.
And also, if you're someone that has gone through a lot of trauma, you might just not trust anybody to talk about this stuff with.
Absolutely.
And feel so alone in the world. And to let you know that there are people out there that have been through it too and want to help you.
And that's why we're real people who are sharing our real recovery experience. We're not gurus. We're not experts, even if some days we think we have some information.
Yeah.
But we're not. We're just people who are navigating our own healing and awakening, and we're learning as we go. And that's why it's super exciting personally for us, because we'll get to have conversations with people. Like, there's a book I read that I totally love, and the person who wrote it, I was like gobbling it up. I learned so much from it. And now I might have them on the show and I'll be able to have conversations with them. And
Yeah.
wow, like that would be so cool.
Yeah, and I mean, same thing where there's a book I read when I was in my early 20s, and her story just really influenced the way that I saw recovery and the way that I was able to heal. And I met her 15 years ago, and to be able to like reconnect with her again and have her on the show would be just such a cool thing. And
Yeah.
you know, like, and hopefully it will help more people. And she's had more books come out since then. And it's just like such a cool thing that we get to do.
Yes. And so another thing that we haven't mentioned is that I run the recovery store and the meeting space. We have 115 meetings a week, and it's a whole variety of everything from various 12-step programs to male and female anger management classes. And then we have workshops and in this, we also have a recovery store, which we have like 22,000 different SKUs, which means different product identifications, whatever. And all for the purpose of helping people to find improvement in every area of their life. And so...
yeah, we even have crystals. I mean, we have like spiritual things. We have recovery things. We have...
because we're seeing it from a very broad place.
Yeah.
We're seeing it not as recovery from one specific affliction. We're seeing the core issues. And the core issue underneath all issues, all compulsions, all obsessions is this idea, this core idea that we have to be somewhere we're not, somebody that we're not. We're not settled and intuitive about our lives when we are acting out in something. We are reacting, we are emotional, or we are frozen in our feelings and we are disconnected. But whatever it is, we lie to ourselves and we tell ourselves just one of this is going to make it better. Or if I could just work a little bit more, or if I could just get that money, or if I could just be thinner, or if I could just get that guy or that girl or whatever. And if I could just this, if I could just have that, if only this, and da-da-da-da. And it's always this anybody but me, anytime but now, anywhere but here kind of energy where we learn to be focused on the future and to be trying to run from the past, or we miss something in the past and we're not able to let go. But no matter what, the mentality that's underneath all addiction is the inability to be fully present and to accept this moment exactly as it is. And so however it comes out, I mean, I grew up with people who did different addictions. You knew somebody had a feeling when their face was in the fridge. I learned how to do that. I learned how to self-medicate. I did not learn tools on how to handle things, how to have healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. How to have positive self-talk.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a really big one, because the thoughts in your head, like they're the issue until you learn that you can live a different way and you can think a different way and you can act a different way, and you don't need something outside to fix you. Like, you already have something within.
And that's the thing, is that a lot of times people will do all these things because they don't want to look within, because they're so afraid that if they go within, they're going to find proof
Worse.
that they're horrible, that they don't deserve happiness. And it's interesting because it's the one place you're going to find that that's not true. But you have to be willing to question it. You have to be willing to go within.
That's also super cool that, like, we're programmed to believe that if we look within, we're going to find worse than what we think we are.
So we'll look anywhere else.
And then when we do look within, we find something so beautiful and so, like, powerful. And it's just amazing.
And that's the thing too. Until we're willing to look within, everybody we meet becomes a means to our end. Like, we're wanting a means to the end, not our end. Although it could be our end.
It could be. Who knows?
But it's a means to getting. You know, we give to get.
Yeah.
We talk to get. We work to get. It's all about get. You know, because on some level we're trying to make up for something that we feel, this spiritual hole that's within us that's not filled. And it is prevalent in our society, it is not just with people who are bottoming from alcohol and drugs.
Right.
It's just those are the people that it's so much of an emergency for them to deal with it because it's gotten that bad. But I often feel like the person who's on a slow cook, who gets so used to life being drama, being empty, being lonely, feeling separate, feeling like shame, feeling guilt, feeling sadness, depression. That the person that doesn't believe that there's a way to heal this stuff and a large growing community of people that can help.
Yeah.
I feel like for the person who is not willing to get off of that elevator down, you know, I feel like that elevator can go really slow down, and that person may end up living their entire life and never really knowing freedom. There's a saying, like, you can't ask a fish how the water is, because you'll ask the fish and the fish will look around and say, what water?
Right.
What water? This is my life. You know, this is how my parents did it. This is how my friends do it. This is how we are as this culture. This is how we are as that. What's the question?
Yeah.
You would do this too if you had my life.
Right.
You would self-medicate.
Yeah.
You would do it.
I know we all thought that in the beginning. Like, if you knew what I'd been through, you would do this too, because there's no other options.
Exactly. And that's why it's important to mention that we've had to overcome great deals of PTSD and multiple addictions.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't even be able to sit here. I'm like, to promise you, I've had a little bit of nervousness on this first episode. And there's no way that if I was not, and I had not done any work on myself, if I'd be sitting here. I promise you. Because there's no way I would be able to handle it. But I'm not totally healed. I've healed from a great amount of PTSD. There are things that used to make me have panic attacks that never even affect me anymore. And I could share about that at the level of a podium or on this microphone and laugh about it. The things that happened in my childhood, the things that I did, the things I used to do for a living. And I'm willing to talk about it because I know that there are so many people that are not willing to talk about these things and ending up feeling like they're alone and that there's something wrong with them. Because there's something interesting about not being able to talk about something.
Yeah. And I feel the same way in that there's a lot of things that I went through as a child or in my 20s, and I felt like a lot of times, like, this was what was supposed to be normal, you know? And growing up in Las Vegas, I guess I have a little bit of a different take of what was normal because, you know, the billboards and, you know, all of those kinds of things, and going to a casino to go to the movies, and, you know, like those kinds of things were what was normal to me. And not that they're bad, but like gambling as like just something to do on a Friday night was a normal thing. And it can lead to other things, and to know that, like, just because you think it's normal doesn't mean that it's healthy for you, and just because society says it's normal doesn't mean that you need to do it too.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to be really focusing on the different things that encompass the real issues, the cause and condition behind the addictions, but also to deal with first things first, to let people know the indicators of how to tell if they have a problem. And we're going to have people on the show that can help them in how to detox off of alcohol and drugs in the safest way, how to tell if a loved one is really having a problem or if you're maybe being paranoid about it, how to really see and to learn how to be the most helpful in those situations without losing yourself or enabling them.
Right.
And we'll have guests on the show that have also become experts in certain, what would you call them, practices medically, like you were talking about. There's different tools that people can use to heal.
Therapeutic theories or modalities. Just like, you know, what works best. Like if it was cognitive
like
behavioral.
EMDR.
Yeah, EMDR, eye movement, desensitization. No, sorry.
What?
I can't remember all the words. Eye movement, desensitization, no, I don't remember it.
It's okay.
But
We'll remember it for that show. but yeah.
Yeah, there's EMDR, brain spotting, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, DBT. I mean, there's
and
a
these
lot
are
of
just
different-
letters. But
Yeah.
when we have people that can explain what to expect, to take all of the fear out of that, the not knowing, so that a person can say, you know what, that actually feels like a yes for me. I feel like I want to try that. We'll introduce that to you and explain about why it could help you and what these things will help you with. All right, let's head over to our break. And remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them and do not represent any 12-step program or any other modality and should not replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. Welcome back. By the way, I'd like to mention that you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and on Amazon Fire TV. You can listen to us on the PHLV radio app or get our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. And we're going to be posting this on the Meeting Space website, as well as having like tons of comments on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited about the episodes that are coming up.
Yeah, they're going to be great.
Yeah, we're really excited. We've been talking to people about them and getting ideas from people, and people are excited about them too. And different people that we've already asked. So we have the first two episodes after this already lined up. The second episode coming up is going to be how to tell when you need help or when someone you love needs help. And also, what does a bottom look like?
Yeah. And, for me, I was 24 when I bottomed, and I've had other types of bottoms since then. And so it's really like, when do you need more help and when do you need more recovery and what does that look like? And it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, because bottom can mean also just bottoming from a behavior.
Yeah.
You could be in long-term recovery already and other behaviors that actually were passable before are coming up to heal. So we're going to be talking about it from a different perspective.
Which is so cool and so needed.
It's so needed. And then the next episode after that, we're going to get into detail about what are the different things you can do to get or to stay sober or clean off of drugs and alcohol. And we're going to be speaking with Tina from Foundation for Recovery. She's going to come on the show. Super
That's
excited.
amazing. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Because they do a lot to help people match up with beds and get other programs and tools to help them. I think they're also working on something right now to help people, like what do they do to get back into the workforce as well.
Yeah, it's going to be great to hear the different resources that you might not already know, or get connected with people that you might not have
and that's
known.
what's so cool about this episode too that we're going to do is that we'll have the phone numbers and the contact information and what to expect, because sometimes you might know somebody or you might actually have an addiction yourself that you're struggling with and you think you might need more help. And yet you don't know where to turn to. And it could be daunting when you don't know anything about rehabs and detoxes and sober living houses, and also how to come off of drugs and alcohol yourself. I know somebody right now who's struggling with a relapse and trying to get off of alcohol, and she's drinking morning, noon, and night. And so it's different for different people.
Yeah. And when is it not safe to do it without
a medical professional?
Right. When do you need that extra help? Physically,
Physically.
Not just mentally.
And not to think, you got this because you don't know. We'll talk about all the tools for that. So we're really excited about that show. And then this episode and the second and third episodes are already super planned out. But after that, we have a lot of other talks. Although the Vets in Recovery one is actually one that lands on today, which is a Friday. And it's going to be a great episode. We're going to interview people who have healed from addiction and from PTSD.
And our veterans.
And our veterans.
Yeah.
And people who are, active, and people who are, people who serve the country, and now they are in a position where they're maybe struggling or lost and healing from addiction, and people who have and help people. We're going to be talking to people on that day too, so that we're really excited about that, and it's so cool that it actually falls on a Friday.
I think one of the cool things I think about that is there's a lot of times for people that have different types of higher profile jobs or whatever like that, that are afraid to speak up and say, I need help. I'm not the strongest person in the room, you know? And so stuff like this is just going to really reach people that might not have ever known that they could be reached.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point of all this, is to take the stigma, to recognize how normal it is, to have this idea that, oh my God, I can never tell anybody that I have a problem. God forbid I show that I have a problem. But to be honest, I mean, really, most people have had something that they've struggled with. Mm-hmm. And for everybody to walk around acting like they're okay all the time, you know, something's going on. Yeah. And so to start saying, you know, to recognize that you're not alone. This is not unique to you. You know, we've gone through this ourselves. And honestly, there's no shame in it for us. We totally get it. We get what it's like to struggle with addiction or with PTSD or
anxiety
or suicidal ideations and
depression
or anger issues, right? Some of us more than others.
Lack of speaking up.
Lack of speaking up or speaking too much. Some of us more than others. Yep. So we're going to do author interviews, like we said, books that we feel are super helpful, ones that we've read, that we have at the Recovery Store that we know would be so helpful for a particular issue. And we're going to interview people who run rehabs and sober living houses and talk about what the experience is for somebody going and staying and how to find one and how to run one. We're going to talk to people like that too. And then we're going to talk about whenever there's a real good topic in the news, we're going to talk about it from a recovery-based perspective.
And from a different outlook on the situation, you know, and
rather than getting caught up in controversy, rather than gossiping or being negative or judgmental, you know, we can actually find another way of navigating when something's difficult.
Because living life on life's terms doesn't mean that you have to be miserable. There's a way to have hope in every situation.
Yep, and we're also going to talk about holidays. They come every year.
They do.
And being around family sometimes is a big trigger as well.
Or not being around family.
Or not being around family. And if you have something that you've been using to self-medicate, or if you need to be clean or sober and you need to be around your friends and family and you don't know how to navigate that, how to verbalize it, how to be comfortable in your own skin there, how to have the support, how to be able to also have fun for the holidays in ways that don't have to include alcohol or drugs at all, because there are a lot of things that you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to have conversations about fixing the effects. So a lot of times, like I personally have ended up with some nerve issues from having done drugs myself. And so I know that people who have done alcohol and drugs may end up with situations that physically that they're afflicted with. If somebody does meth, there's a condition called meth mouth, and there are dentists that actually specialize in helping to restore your teeth. And if you don't have money to be able to get you in touch with the right benefits to be able to get that care. And it goes a long way, each thing, to be able to keep improving and chip at all the different ways that addiction has robbed from the quality of our life.
Well, and I mean, like I think about when I first stopped using and drinking and went to the doctor and had to tell them, like, you know, these are the things, and how nervous I was to do that, and how afraid I was that the doctor was going to judge me.
Absolutely.
And luckily I had an amazing doctor that didn't judge me and just kind of helped me like see what I needed to do. But there are, you know, 15 years later, there are some effects that I believe are from when I did drink and use.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you know, and yet there's also things that they're not written in stone. We can heal. You know, the mind, the brain recovers, the body recovers in many ways if we keep doing the next right thing. We're also going to be talking about dual diagnosis. That's her favorite. Yep. So
absolutely
that's the one she's going to host, and for sure, because she knows way more about that stuff than I do. And we're going to talk about how to have the right attitude and recognize that our attitude is one of the biggest issues that we have when it's bad, and one of the best advocates of a better life when we can flip the script.
Yeah, for sure. And the idea of like helping each other in that, and, you know, joining with people in that, and how recovery can help you do that.
And we would also love to interview, shine a light, and talk about the tunnels. And so I haven't talked to them yet. So if it didn't happen, it's probably because they said no. But we will see. And then we would like to also interview different therapists of different therapeutic modalities and how it can help as an adjunct to anything else that they're doing.
Which is my second favorite subject.
Which she'll probably be doing that one too. And she's probably going to interview at least one of the authors. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I struggled with smoking for 10 years. After I swore I wasn't going to smoke because my dad smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And it was one of the hardest addictions to break.
Really? For me, it was Dr. Pepper, but...
Yeah. Well, cigarettes, it was very, very difficult. And so, but I had to learn a lot of tools and a way of doing it that I feel I have helped a lot of people get off of cigarettes because of it.
Yeah.
And I would love to do a conversation about that.
That's amazing.
And then there's some really good books as well on it, and maybe have the authors of those come on the show as well to really pack a show on how to get off of cigarettes.
That's a really cool
And vaping.
idea.
Yeah, absolutely. The God issue. This has to be a topic we at least do once. You know, so many people, they don't get into 12-step recovery, or they get turned off to their childhood religion.
I didn't go into the rooms for, I detoxed for 4 days because I was afraid of that word.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to change the narrative about that too. Not to take somebody else's belief as your own, but to find what really resonates for you. So we're excited about that one. We're also going to talk about the stigma of 12-step recovery and making it more normal in society, because there's a lot of benefit to going to a 12-step program.
For sure.
It's free.
Yeah.
You could just put a couple of bucks in the basket.
Absolutely.
And you have a support system. So it is one of the tools.
And the stigma, I think, is false today. Like, I really do believe that there's been a shift in society where people see the benefits of people that are in recovery and people that are living an honest life where they're trying to make amends for their wrongs. And, you know, I feel like that this is really going to be a big thing, just like a stigma in mental health and, you know, mental illness, and how people can live good lives.
Exactly. And on the subject of 12-step recovery being something that people can do, there's a lot of fear around what to expect. You know, when we get phone calls at the recovery store, most often asking if there's meetings, and they call it classes. Yeah. And when they call it a class, it's usually like, ding, ding, ding. This is their first time.
Yeah.
And so we'll have a whole conversation like, is this your first time? And they'll be like, yes. And you could tell they're nervous. Almost everybody is. It's more normal to be nervous. I mean, you don't know what to expect, and you're coming in a vulnerable position.
Yeah.
And you're hoping to get help.
And
so
may even be detoxing at that time.
Oh my
and
God,
so you're
yes.
sick.
So you're sick, you're scared, you know you can't live this way anymore, but you don't know what to do. And so we always have this kind of conversation with them, and we say, if this is your new, would you like me to tell you what to expect? And they always say yes.
Yeah.
And so we say, from soup to nuts, this is what to expect in a 12-step meeting. And so that they can come, they can get a schedule, and then they can go to a meeting. And I've had so many people thank us for doing that, because they feel more comfortable when they're in a meeting and they know what to expect. So we're going to be talking about what to expect on a show, so that people who are scared or can't call us at the recovery store for some reason will be able to have that information.
Mm-hmm.
We're also going to, of course, talk about helping somebody else without doing it codependently. And we're going to do an episode on COVID. I know you're probably COVIDed it out, but we want to talk about what happened too. And
and I mean, the idea, like you were talking earlier about how like you've had panic attacks. My worst panic attacks were during those 2 years.
When you had to wear a mask.
Right, because of, and the isolation piece.
Yeah.
Like I've, because of the kind of work I do, I'm an essential worker, but I did work from home for a while, and I did do the school from home for a while. And so I didn't see humans for a while. And I love my cats, but I didn't see humans.
Yeah, we literally sucked her into the recovery store as an intervention for her mental well-being.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Yeah, so I mean, there are issues that stem from that. And there are, in the world of therapy, we are seeing some disorders.
And not to mention the amount of people that ended up coming and admitting that they have a problem now because alcohol and pot is getting delivered to their house during COVID. There was a lot going on, and we'd like to talk about this. There was some really great stories during that time of just amazing things that happened. We were interviewed for Fox 5. We were deemed an essential business and reopened, and it was after just 2 days of being closed. And the meeting space was a great resource for people that could not, because of PTSD or homelessness or really low, struggling with relapse, that they just couldn't, or their family is just toxic and that's the only place that they would have to quarantine in, or dangerous, So we had a lot of really great things happen during that, where we saw people heal from stuff that, man, they were struggling with for a long time in a more intimate environment. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about young people in recovery. It's a very important topic because a lot of times people expect or think that people who are healing, they do it later. Like, have your fun now, and then when you find it's a problem, then you can do this later. And so, God, people are getting addicted at younger and younger ages.
Because it's so much more accessible and
normal.
And the drugs these days are just so much more potent. Like, there's...
Oh, yeah. Even marijuana is so potent, and it's legalized now.
And it's a gummy.
Yeah.
I mean, like it wasn't that way when we were using
No, I have to say, thank God.
Right.
Because I have food addiction and I had marijuana addiction, and those two should never come together.
No.
One always led to the other one because I would get the munchies.
But then they would be the same, and then
forget it.
It would have been bad.
No, I would not know what... I would have to check my motives as whether or not I was going to eat the gummy for the food part of it, or eat the gummy for the high part of it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about sex in recovery, because when you start not self-medicating, your whole sex life changes. I don't care who you are, drastically.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Actually, for the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to actually
you get to be present, and you get to feel, and you get to
Absolutely.
remember it the next morning.
But it's difficult to navigate
Yeah.
When you haven't actually any clue how to do it, especially if the sex that you thought was your best sex was usually stuff you couldn't even remember.
Right.
Or happened after, and then the next morning you're like, who are you?
Yeah, why are you in my bed?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that, but also, if people have sex dysfunction or, things to heal from, the shame tapes, the pressure, the whole idea about being on and performing, we're going to be talking about that too. This is going to be a really good topic too, because sex addiction is very prevalent too. Even untreated sex addiction is very prevalent within even 12-step programs.
Well, and sex addiction not just being hypersexual, but also being
anorexia,
the sexual anorexia, which most people have never heard of.
And then we're also going to talk about what Las Vegas is famous for: gambling.
Yes.
And gambling addiction, and how to tell whether or not you have a problem.
And how to get help.
And how to get help.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we'll have people who have experienced overcoming, losing things, and being trapped in that addiction as well. We're also going to talk about how to avoid a relapse. What are the tools that you can do to more empower you to have long-term recovery and not be susceptible to relapse. The kind of mentality that has to take place for that.
Yeah.
What has to shift deep in the mind for the mind to be all in?
Well, and I mean, because there is an idea of you relapse, you come back, you relapse, you come back, but what if you just stayed?
Right. Yeah. And so also, what happens if there's a little oopsie and you don't know what's going on? And so then you're asking yourself, do I have to reset my sobriety date? Or my clean date? Do I have to? Am I really? One time I went to Whole Foods and there was marinated mushrooms, and I promise you, I got a little high. I didn't even know. I knew that they marinated it in wine, but I didn't actually know that it wasn't cooked out. I was very new to early on, and I felt it, and I was, what am I going to do? Oh my God, you know, am I really sober? Have I been sober? And so we'll talk about that too. Also, we're going to talk about what happens when you're not honest with your doctor. If you go to a medical professional and your professional wants to be a professional and they want to help you to heal from whatever it is that you're bringing to them to heal, but they ask you anything going on, anything happening, and you don't say that, by the way, I'm doing cocaine.
Right, or when you fill out the questionnaire and they're like, how often do you drink? And you say, rarely.
Right, yeah. How can anybody really help you?
Yeah.
And you would think this doesn't even help, that this doesn't happen at the level of the psychologist or the psychiatrist. Oh, but it happens so much more.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because people use the psychiatrist as the official drug dealer. You know, hey, change the way I feel. But also, they don't want to admit that they have a problem to the people who could most help them.
Right.
And so there has to be, and also if you're having surgery and know that you're going to have possibly to take pain medication, that you know, there's a conversation that needs to take place too, to make the surgeon privy to what they would need to do
and how to navigate it yourself at home with like an accountability person and those kinds of things.
If you have to have pain medication,
absolutely.
And maybe alternative things you can do for helping with pain and recovery that may not be what the doctor even would normally suggest, but would be for if it was an option. And so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about growing up in alcoholism or dysfunction. We're going to talk about the type of mentality, the codependent or the addict that comes out of that environment. We're going to talk about how alcoholism and drug addiction tends to be repeated in some way, shape, or form, generation after generation, and it can't even skip a generation.
And how to kill that curse, the generational curse.
How to stop it. Absolutely. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about self-forgiveness, about healing, and we're going to be talking about all the things that we personally in our own lives do so we can keep healing. We're going to be talking about our own shifts in perception and the things that we walk through, and we're going to be talking about the things that we realize. So this has been a great episode. It's our first episode. It's so much.
Yeah,
you know,
great.
when you list it all out, it's like, wow, there's going to be so many great conversations. And if you have any ideas, please let us know, because we would love to have ideas. Or if you want to be on the show or call in and have a specific question that we can answer, we would love to do that too. We're going to be accepting people calling in, being on Zoom, being on this telephone, as well as coming and joining us in the studio. So thank you for joining us today on The Real Recovery Show. We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor and gracious host, PHLV, here in Las Vegas. See you next week.